I'm Andrew Levy, and this is The American Dream.
So subjective morality, right off the bat, my first thought would be, if someone were to tell me they believe in subjective morality, I would ask them how you can believe in how everything else in life has to be ordered objectively except our behavior. This doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like playing a game of Monopoly, let's say. Imagine you're sitting with your friends. You decide, I think that the rules for this game is subjective. And I'm going to play how I want to play. I win how I decide to win, and you do the same. Whoever wins first wins, unless you feel otherwise. It's crazy. That's what subjective morality is. Putting rules for our behavior, that is the conclusion of that. That's what that is for our behavior, and it's really a crazy thing. I would actually argue that the word moral has lost its credibility, its value, its worth, and maybe it's more worthwhile when talking about morality to change the word to order. And now when we're talking about things in terms of order, you'd have to explain how this works in an order. You can't just say, well, this is my morality, or this is what I feel about a thing, or whatever it is. The main question, though, is how did we get here? How did we get to living in a society where this is the case, where there's so many of us that believe in this concept of subjective morality? And I think this directly connects to religion. How we used to be a more religious society. We may not have ever been the most religious people. I'm sure maybe we've had the most religious people in this country. As a whole, I don't think we were necessarily the most religious people. However, there was a concept that most people in this country, for most of its history, believed that there was religion, God, we serve God, and we base our lives in doing so, and we're basing our values and ideals based off the system that was religion. That's where our morality and ideals came from. Eventually, we came to rejecting religious ideals. We got God out of places, the Bible teachings out of places in public schools or whatever it may be. And we've been forwarding secular ideals. And I think that the laws in play, they, as I stated in the previous video, they don't actually punish immoral things. They punish things that they decide should be punished. So basically that means the conclusion of that is the government gets to decide what is right and wrong. That there isn't no right or wrong outside the government. And the most important thing is the law. Look at abortion. That if abortion was illegal, they could make the argument, if they're basing their morality on what the laws are, they could say that abortion being illegal is immoral. But not being illegal, you can actually argue it being a legal matter that, oh, well, this is actually a moral thing. What makes it a moral thing? I mean, the court system. It's actually said in Seinfeld, there was an episode where where Elaine said that it's the Supreme Court that gives me the right to an abortion, that makes it right, as if something giving you a right to do something makes it right. A right should be a moral thing, or not. That's not actually true. I actually believe that for a free country, we need to have things that are probably immoral, like lying and different things, not have government intervention. They're wrong, they're immoral, they're bad, but you have the right to do these bad things in a free country. The question is what to put into law. And the things to put into law, my rule of thumb is anything being put into law should be an immoral thing. So if you break this law, you are committing a crime that is actually immoral. If it's not committing something actually immoral, it should not be put into law. That's my rule of thumb here with all this. The laws have messed with our morality, our sense of morality. You lose a sense of morality when your life gets based more around the laws of the land than the laws of the Bible, the laws from God. Now you don't have it. Now it's just subjective. Now it's a democratic rule situation. As long as you get enough people to vote on a thing, that thing could be considered immoral. You could literally just make up whatever you want, decide, well, if the court approves of it, this thing is immoral. If I get the court to say that anybody earning under $30,000, anybody earning over $100,000 has to give 10% of their money to those people, that's the law we all agree on. You're going to think that's crazy, but if that becomes the law, the same way that is a moral thing, based on the fact that there's no moral basis to it, but it's the law, and that's the basis for the morality, the same way an abortion is moral, the same way so many things can be moral. As I made it a point to say about the traffic signs and this and that, having to be fined, having to be punished for doing all these things that aren't outright immoral. You should only be punished for doing immoral things. You punish bad behavior. You don't punish behavior that's not bad. This may sound controversial. It may also sound simple. If you tell somebody to punish bad behavior, not to punish not bad behavior, most people would agree with this, but they don't realize how many things we actually get punished for on a regular basis that's not immoral, or that, yeah, that's not immoral. It's not a bad thing per se. You might argue breaking the law in and of itself is immoral, and I would agree breaking the law can be considered immoral. However, the laws themselves for that a system like that to work have to actually be moral laws. You can't just make up laws and conclude, well, it's the law, so it's moral. In a communist regime where they're repressing the people and the people are being controlled by the government and their lives are being dictated in a moral manner, you could say, well, these are the laws and you have to follow, and not to follow it is immoral. I don't think that's right. If you have a way out and you have a way to not follow the system, and the system is immoral, you go against the system. You do what you can to protect yourself, but you go against the system to try leading the most moral life you can to serving God. Our purpose is to serve God. That's the conclusion here. If there is no purpose to serving God, I don't know what our purpose for existence is. Subjective morality is this idea we serve ourselves. Morality goes back to you. It's subjective, which basically, back to the game, the board game, in my board game, I win how I win, and you win how you win. And at the end of the game, when everyone wins, there's no sense of achievement there. There's no sense of win. There's no sense of accomplishing anything. It's just, you did your thing how you felt, and you accomplished it. And if you don't accomplish it, well, and you're okay with that, then you're okay with that. I don't know. Whatever it is, it doesn't make too much sense at the end of the day. It doesn't actually forward order in society. Moral ideals from the Bible and religion actually do that. They've been doing that for generations. For as far as I know, anywhere where it's been implemented to have moral rules, it works. But there's this concept that I think actually is where the idea of subjective morality really started. And I blame all these secular things that our society has on religious people. Why? Because if a religious person is presenting himself properly, and they're ultimately forwarding a good with what they're doing, and that's how they're presenting themselves, then ultimately the religion would be the standard, I believe, that we would go by. We would go by this standard if we can see how it's ultimately good. There are a lot of us who do see how it is ultimately good, and those of us who do try to follow it and focus on serving God and being a better religious person. But then there's a lot of us out there who have been exposed to all these people out there who I would call effectively secular, which would probably be a very controversial thing if it was a known thing. I kind of made it up, so it's not really known. This idea of being effectively secular, it's really based on a person's behavior, what they're doing, and what they're serving. It's really more towards what they're serving than what they're doing. Let's say you see a person who looks religious and they're beating some other person. You see them like they're beating their kid in public, let's say. You might think to yourself, like, wow, this is what religion does. Religious people are crazy. Like, this religious devout person would probably say he's doing this in the name of God to serve God, or whatever it may be. And then other people witness this, and now this person is looking really bad and has presented himself really bad and has given a bad name to religion. Now you have people being turned off by it. And then there's different things. That's just an example I made up, but there's a lot of examples we can find of behaviors that were really bad behaviors done by so-called religious people. I would call these people effectively secular, or at least presenting themselves as effectively secular. I think this term, you can actually make more sense of things. If a person is behaving in a bad way, you should be able to identify that as this person is behaving in a more secular manner than a religious manner. It's not as though because a person's dressing the part and they may be even following all the customs and traditions, but when they're doing these bad things, they're not behaving in a godly way. We used to know this. We used to know that you're not behaving in a way that God wants you to behave. It's bad. And we know that people sin. It's not like religious people don't know that other people sin. The difference is that if more people than not find it to be normal, like beating children to be a normal thing, let's say, and that's turned a lot of people off, or I don't know, just controlling people to the extent that they want to get away. They're not making them feel fulfilled. They're not making them feel loved. They're not making them feel like they're serving a purpose. They actually make the children, and that's a lot of children probably have been through this, they make the children feel like they're serving them. Now the children feel like all this religion thing is about is just my parents are telling me to do it. And yeah, maybe there's a God, maybe I believe him, maybe I don't, but ultimately they're making me feel like this is all about them, and I kind of just want to get away from this. And then they become irreligious. Maybe they become an atheist or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, all this makes more sense, I think, if you understand that these people are behaving more effectively secular. And it also could be the effectively secular part is that the person is serving themselves. Even though they're doing all the customs and traditions and all that stuff, they're really just serving themselves. So they do the religion how they feel to do it, and whatever provides their ego with the satisfaction it wants or they want. It's not about serving God, and they're not giving themselves over in a humble way, in a way where they can be apologetic about things, in a way where it's like, yeah, I'm human and I make mistakes and I do wrong things. I'm really going to try to be better and do better. And we all do this, and we can all together as a community work and help each other with all these things. And this could be a really incredible thing where it's like you see people falling short and doing bad things, and you speak to each other about it. You're there for each other about it, and you can actually ultimately find yourself serving God and forwarding the good. I like to say that good is synonymous with God. Basically, anything that's forwarding good is serving God. Even if you're an atheist, you're doing good things. The good thing is meaningless, doesn't have a purpose without God. So they go hand in hand, God and good. An atheist would argue we make our own purpose. And I would argue, well, that's how do you do that? And then they would say, well, we provide for this, we do that good, we do this good, and all these things that we do are good, and we make the world function happily and with peace. We forward all the good things. The thing is, when you're doing good, the idea of doing something good is to serve a purpose for something. You're doing something good for something. Is it just for you? Are we all just existing as a bunch of narcissists to serve ourselves, to do good for ourselves, and then we die, and then we have achieved the good after death? There's no sense in this. This is nonsense. This is the idea of subjective morality. Everything with subjective morality, subjective is based on you, based on what you feel about a thing, whether you like it or not. So now a person could behave in a completely disgusting, immoral manner, and it doesn't bother you. You don't feel it is immoral, and to you it's moral because it's subjective, and to someone else it might be immoral, but to that person it's also subjective. So they can't say anything to the person that's doing the bad thing, because to that person it's subjective, and you can't have order. There's no order in society for our behavior. How can you punish somebody? How can you say, I go into a store and I tell them, well, morality, the way we're supposed to behave is based on what I feel. I feel like taking whatever I want from this guy. Who's to tell me that it's wrong? You? But that's what you feel. Why should I be punished because of what you feel? My morality says otherwise. The word morality becomes rendered meaningless. It has no purpose. And through this, good doesn't exist, bad doesn't exist. It's all a bunch of nonsense. But I think we got here through the laws and through becoming more and more secular, and through religious people's bad behavior, forwarding this concept that this is how religious people behave. It's not as though a person's dressed religious and behaves what appears to be religious, that because they're doing that they don't do bad things. Which is why I think this term effectively secular is more effective. You explain to somebody, this person may not be an atheist, but if you look at all these behaviors that you see this guy doing, maybe understand that this person is actually more effectively secular. They're really looking to serve themselves than to serve God. And when you see somebody who's trying to do the good and do the things that look more like they're serving God, that's better. That's good. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it should appear. And there's a lot of people out there that do that, but there's too many that don't, unfortunately. I'm not saying which one there's more of. That's not my place to see such a thing. But I will say that the people that are appearing effectively secular, those are the ones that have caused people to become irreligious and turn away from God. And then the idea of morality that comes from the source of morality that comes from religion is now meaningless to people. And they believe morality to be a good thing. You have to have morality is a important thing. So what do? They decide, we'll just make our own morality. There's people that would argue, atheists, many atheists I've heard argue this. They would say something along the lines of, just keep it at, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. And the rest is all whatever. The rest is basically irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But what if I want to do things? What if I want things done to me that I don't care about if other people do to me? And I think, well, I go into a store and I think to myself, in my store, if some person just took a dollar something off the shelf, whatever. I wouldn't care if in my store someone took an item that was $1 off the shelf. So I see an item there, it says $1, I'll just take it, I'll pocket it. Because I'm doing to myself what I want done to me, and I'm not doing what I don't want done to me. It's their logic, their reasoning, their everything. You don't want, morality is not based on what you feel. This is a nonsense concept that so many people have. It's completely absurd. Anyhow, that's all I got for that. Next, I want to get into this idea of age limitations. maturity of the age and how it's related to how feminism is really related to it, as I've spoken about both of those things, and how actually these things are being affected from secularism, which is to feminism, and feminism is affecting our age and stunting our maturity. All the best, and thanks for watching.